Just so you can see it. There. So you can see it, and that's
One minute. Well, you said I have to go at 11 o'clock.
no. Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I hope we've all recovered from our chocolate-filled weekend. And we're not going to be too tired from all the extra sugar. Welcome to Council Workshop for April 11th. As we have quorum, I will call the meeting to order. It is now 11 o'clock. I'd also like to acknowledge that the city of Maple Ridge carries out its business on the traditional and unceded territory of the Katzie First Nation and the Kwantlen First Nation. I will pass it off to our corporate officer.
Thank you, sir. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and is available to the public for playback on our website in accordance with policy 3.12. Primary purpose of council workshop meeting is receipt of information, review and discussion of policies and other matters of interest to council, and to make decisions related to such matters as required. This meeting is being conducted through the city's one meeting platform, and council has been provided with voting cards: green in favor, red for opposed, yellow for point of order. We will manually input the votes into our log of the minutes. To be put on the speakers list, please physically raise your hand so that the mayor can add you to the list.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Schiller, seconded by Councillor Youssef. All those in favor? Unanimous. Motion has been approved. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for March 28th, 2023? Moved by Councillor Duick, seconded by Councillor Carreras. Ooh, I'm a little off right now. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Motion has been carried. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 4. We have a presentation from us at the request of council from Coast Mental Health. We have Keir McDonald, and you have some folks that you brought with you. Why don't you come on down and introduce your team?
Good morning.
And thank you. You have the floor.
Good morning, Mayor Remy and Council. My name is Keir McDonald. As was just mentioned, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Coast Mental Health. Today, I'm joined by 2 of our team members, Renee Bajke, who is our Executive Director of Program Services. And at the back, we have Susan Hancock, which is our Senior Manager of Communications and Community Development. See, we've got this presentation ready to go. I can just toggle with this, I imagine. Perfect. See if I can make this work. So we've done introductions. Firstly, thanks for the opportunity to be here this morning and talk a little bit more about the work that Coast does really across the Lower Mainland, but most specifically in Maple Ridge. We've got a very short amount of time, so we're going to breeze through it, but really just to talk about who is Coast, really the services available in Maple Ridge, and Renee is really going to touch a little bit more on that. Hoping to finish a little bit with some of the successes and challenges we've seen since we came to Maple Ridge in 2017, and then obviously throw to any questions that we have at the end of that. Really, for over 50 years, Coast Mental Health has been dedicated to supporting individuals that experience mental illness, really guided by that vision of a community that embraces and honours people with mental illness so that they may thrive and contribute. Really, how we do that is those 3 pillars of support down the bottom. So housing, support services, employment and education. So Coast Mental Health operates 52 facilities across the Lower Mainland, across 6 communities in particular, serving upwards of 5,000 individuals a year. We do that in several different settings. We do community-based programs, so outreach services. We have community centres such as drop-in facilities, a clubhouse in Vancouver, another drop-in facility in Vancouver. We operate employment programs, temporary employment programs, and as I mentioned before, the homeless outreach programs. Then we get into sort of our mental health license facilities. I think Renee, 17 licensed mental health facilities. We also run mental health and substance use treatment programs, supportive housing, which is a big part of what we'll be talking about today, including the 151 units in Maple Ridge. Across the Lower Mainland, though, we operate just over 500 units of supportive housing. And then what we would call more semi-independent, so really housing with supports. So really operating everything from those community-based services all the way up to sort of those high-intensity 24-hour licensed programs, really dealing with folks that are at the severe mental illness and substance use needs. I'm going to hand over now to Renee to talk a little bit more.
Thank you. In Maple Ridge, we are probably best known for the 3 facilities that we operate, which totals 151 homes for people. The other services, though, that we offer, and you may not be so familiar with, are our outreach teams. So our outreach teams offer support to 246 people in Maple Ridge. And we also have 120 rent supplements that we supply. Last summer, we saw a need for youth services in Maple Ridge, and through the funding of our foundation, we established a youth outreach team. The good part with this is that they are very age specific, and they're able to offer services which youth need in this area. We also collaborate with community partners such as the Foundry. We do a lot of harm reduction in the area, and as you are aware, we don't have supervised consumption sites in Maple Ridge, although we do have some other nonprofits who do harm reduction supplies. We approach harm reduction with a trauma-informed lens, and we adopt harm reduction strategies to decrease the number of toxic drugs and effects of toxic drugs in the community. Over the winter, we partnered with the city to run the winter emergency weather shelter. This has now come to an end, but there was an urgent need for shelter beds in the community that we were not meeting. And we noticed this because we had an increase of guests in our sites as they had nowhere else to go. We will probably be need as a community to look at this in the summer again when the heat, extreme weather situations arise. I can quickly run through some stats from the extreme weather shelter. So we operated for 44 days. We served 625 clients. Average occupation per night was 13 people. Out of the 625, 3 people were seniors, and adults made up 622 of the clients. 11% were Indigenous, 30% were female, and 40% were people with disabilities. Just going to touch on the review of our programs that was done last year in 2022. We are looking forward to the outcome of this so that we can learn and improve our services. We believe it should be about April.
I'll touch really quickly on this one. Some good news. We're hearing that we will have a groundbreaking on the Fraser Street supportive housing project in the coming few weeks. It has been long awaited. Obviously, we experienced some delays, but for us, really in terms of how we move forward, this project is an incredibly important piece of moving beyond the current Maple Ridge modular project that really what was a temporary and I think long past due its useful life. So excited to see this project get underway. We know how quickly once they do break ground that these things come up, particularly in the modular manufacturing. And we could see this opening, I think, by the spring next year. So something definitely excited to look forward to. 52 studio units, I believe, and very much like our Garibaldi project in terms of how it will look and operate.
Just a quick synopsis of the residents who live in the 3 buildings. So they're generally in the age group of 40 to 60 years of age. It's a 50-50 split between male and female. Their health profile is really significant. It's complex. There are chronic health issues, there are mental health disorders and substance use. And generally, they've lived on the streets for 10 plus years before they come to us. Cannot stress enough the need for complex care. These clients are unable to move into long-term care because of their substance use disorders. And we are having to support client through palliative care to the point of death because there's nowhere for them to go. And we are not resourced to do this. They are unable to access the normal trajectory of care for a number of reasons. Yeah, one more.
Actually, I skipped that one. So.
Oh, you skipped that one. Okay. So the supports we offer in the program, we have a meal program because many people do not have money for meals. And of significance, it is at Alouette Heights, we are not funded for this. So we do all of this through our foundation and the money they can help out with. We focus on weekly food bank deliveries as well as food for the soul. We are very happy to have introduced the services of Dr. Bill McEwen, who's a renowned psychiatrist, and he comes on site and runs clinics. He probably sees about 20 people every Friday, and these are people who could not access the care needed before and are now treated. We have 7 days a week nursing supports, which we rallied for. And they are very involved in referrals assessments and the dressings that come along with the clients and their drug use. We do medication support programs as well as oat dispensing through pharmacies. We have group and community programming, which includes cultural, life skills, social education, and employment. MSDPR on site once a week to work with the clients around ID documents, accessing money, et cetera, And we do a lot of referrals to GP and dental services. Supporting the other things that we work with our clients is referrals to the ACT teams and the RCM teams, which are in Maple Ridge. We work with them around transportation supports, including getting tickets and getting them to their appointments. We do referrals to other community housing supports. We work with Lions to look at housing, Cornerstone and Turnock. We do honorarium programs, which allows our clients to go to that first step of employment and be responsible and learn what they need to do to go back into employment in the community. We partnership with the BIA on a clean team, which cleans up areas around Maple Ridge. And in order to stay in touch with what the tenants want, we do monthly tenant meetings and listen to what they have to say. Our successes to date developed a community network of emergency supports to help us with the clinical needs. And this is primarily through the ACT teams and the RCM teams. Because we have a lot of the medical issues and psychiatric issues addressed, we're able to have more regular conversations with the residents, and we encourage them to support their own wellness trajectory. We've seen a reduction of evictions from the program because people now have a lot of their needs being met in terms of medical, psychiatric, and just having a roof over their head. And Coast was able to get Dr. Bill McEwen, who you can see there, and he comes in every week and knocks on doors and makes amazing connections with the clients. And there's a psychiatric clinic at all 3 sites every Friday. We provide access to harm reduction services. And in 2022, we were able to respond to 102 overdoses that were not fatal after the response. All of our staff are trained in administration of Narcan as well as first aid. I've spoken to the nurses. We are seeing it slow, but increasing number of residents accessing opioid replacement therapy through our programs. And we've introduced the residents to a wider range of community activities which are available to support their interests and needs. The challenges we continue to face is with the community health services supports. So we have very limited access to primary healthcare supports. We can't get in to see GPs. We have aging and complex needs for our tenants who require a very high level of support. They have a very limited access to long-term care, and there's a continued urgency for a streamlined process to access treatment options. We do see an increasing number of people experiencing homelessness and accessing our sites for basic shelter and needs.
And that is all.
Mhm.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Before I open it up to questions, I just want to take a moment and personally thank you. We spoke a number of times last year during the emergency weather shelter, and we as a city and council appreciate you stepping up and filling up the void. As we can see by the numbers that you presented, it was definitely needed. And we are glad that we were able to work together to get the program up and running. So I appreciate everything you've done for us to date. And on that, I will open it up for questions. Councillor Youssef.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for the work that you're doing in our community. Just a real quick question around Royal Crescent and Garibaldi Ridge. You said that especially, I believe, Royal Crescent is coming to the end of its functional life. Will there be a transition then not only away from the modular construction, but also to seniors housing more so than the current model? Or is it going to be the current model with a new building going in?
I can speak to in terms of what the new building will look like, but I think staff could probably speak to what the replacement project for the Royal Crescent site looks like. Really for us, as I mentioned, the 52 new units will be modular housing and very much like the Garibaldi project. I think we're hoping in terms of even the review that was underway that might land and might help inform the process as we move forward in terms of, well, what does that model look like? Like, what do supports look like? We know there's going to be a large number of individuals that is currently being housed and supported in the current location that will need to relocate. But I'm really hopeful that, we can all take a look at that report when it comes down in terms of, okay, so what can we do? How is this an opportunity to do something differently? But I do know that there is work underway for the replacement of the current site for something more seniors oriented, but maybe that's a staff question.
Thank you for that. And through the chair, will the same be for Garibaldi Ridge as well, where it will remain under the current model, possibly a renewed building, although I don't think Garibaldi Heights is as old as Royal Crescent.
No, thanks for the question. No, I think it's 2 years old, 3 years old? 3 years old, yeah. So that one, again, I think in terms of operating models, I don't think anyone's here saying things are perfect right now. And I think we're doing the best we can with the available resources and really operating under the model that exists with BC Housing right now. In terms of Garibaldi, I think it's been largely successful in terms of its operations, but there's no doubt that I think any review coming down is going to be learnings for all three projects really in terms of the supportive housing side of things. So even Alouette, even though that is a purpose-built facility, coming into Coast, what I was hopeful of is really looking at the three and saying, what kind of a continuum can we achieve? What kind of needs are being met and needs that aren't being met, and what operational changes can be made across all three gradually, because it's hard to sort of blow things up overnight. But we get a real opportunity with the building opening next year to say, okay, what is the primary model that will operate? What are the support levels that are in the building? And how do we work from now until then to sort of look at the proportion? Is everyone coming across that building, or is it just a proportion? And then we start mixing up the portfolio a little bit depending on needs and the service model a little bit.
Thank you for that. And you mentioned during the presentation that you do look after some of your clients into the advanced stages of palliative care. And you also said that you're not equipped, for lack of a better word, for that. What can we as a municipality do to support that, especially and specifically focusing on the senior population? I believe your age group was very close to being seniors.
Thank you. In terms of what we can do to support that, is we need complex care in this community. We need to have a low barrier approach to people accessing complex care. We need to have a low barrier approach to home services coming into the home. Because right now there are so many rules that, and obviously for good reason, but it makes those services not reachable for us. And that's inclusive for the older population who need long-term care.
Thank you. And last question through you, Mr. Chair. When you say a low barrier approach to that, can you elaborate for someone like myself who's not involved in the field?
Sure. So this is what a low barrier is. It means that there's very little barriers to accessing housing. So if you look at the traditional models of supported housing, if you're using substances, you can't access it. If there's a low tolerance for behaviors, it becomes an issue and people get evicted. We need harm reduction services in these buildings. We need to approach it with trauma-informed lenses. Because until we do that and use housing first, it's not going to be a success.
Thank you for those answers. And more importantly, thank you for the work that you are doing in our community. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, Mayor Rumi, and thank you to Coast for coming in today and providing us with this update. So we were talking about the three different facilities. You've addressed this a little bit already, that you could sort of look at adjusting, programming in the different locations based on information that comes out. I'm wondering too if the new Fraser Street facility, does the fact that that's sort of being, I understand it's modular, but in some ways it is a more purpose-built situation than Royal Crescent. Does that allow you to have either programs or just even like design features in place that might reduce the impact on the neighborhood?
Sure. Yes, it will. Because of the ability to take in people with disabilities as an elevator. We are using a lot of community contacts to design programs and then run them at all of our sites. We are starting with the Community Advisory Committee that's local to the area. We still work with the ones from Garibaldi and MODS. So that there's community input into the programming. And we do have excellent relationships with the RCMP from Maple Ridge and city bylaws. We're in contact with them often, looking at trends and trying to find solutions.
Thank you. And maybe you could just explain a little bit to me more about the difference if we have Alouette and we have Fraser Street and Garibaldi, sort of just at a very basic level, sort of what the differences between those three facilities are, like in type of the type of client that you're working with, or sort of the goals of that facility.
When we took over Alouette, which was the first one, it was existing and we had clients who had been there and have been there for a long time. MODS and Garibaldi, we were trying to get people to work through and move into more independent type of living. However, as you all know, rental is huge in Maple Ridge. And currently we're estimating that if a client is to move out of modular or Garibaldi, they will be spending 59% of their income just on rent.
59?
59. And that's inclusive of their rent supplements. So there are other barriers that stop that flow through as we would like to see it.
Thank you. That's very helpful to know as well. And are all three of those locations considered low barrier in terms of people being able to be residents there while having substance misuse issues?
Definitely the two modulars, so Garibaldi and Maple Ridge Mods on Royal Crescent. We have kind of turned the lens a little on Alouette, and it wasn't particularly low barrier when we started, but we are approaching it with a more approach to a low barrier housing program, because those are the referrals we're seeing from all the community resources. Yep.
Just going to jump in on this one as well. In terms of, again, what we're operating right now, I think that's an accurate reflection. I think when we look at the needs, when we look at sort of how people feel safe in buildings, talk about folks that, are aging and disabilities, I don't see a continuum. You know, we are really trying to meet that entry point for so many, which again, this started from the closure of an encampment, and we don't have enough of those next steps. You know, I've spoken about this over the years in terms of mental health and substance use supports. You know, we still struggle to have people access those services. And really, that's what's required, is to help people stabilize to be able to take that next step forward. But if we don't have that next step for the stock of housing, so non-market, purpose-built non-market rental housing, everything from that income assistance level to low income, I think that's where we're still playing catch up in community. I think we welcome some new buildings and we probably need many more. But really, I would love to see us achieving a little bit more of a continuum in terms of how those services are structured, but also flow, so that people have the opportunity to move forward from those environments to something more permanent and somewhat more independent as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you. And Councillor Duick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. The Alouette Heights, I'm happy to hear that you are looking at turning the lens, because this councillor that was here in the day when that project went through, it was very much based on transitional housing, abstinence base. It was that next tier. So people have gone through treatment. They've done their not only detox, but treatment. And the idea was to live there for up to 2 years and get them the supports when it comes to employment and continue on. So I think there's a need for every level, as you have mentioned, but I would like to see the Alouette Heights go back to what it was originally intended for when the city provided the property in order for that to happen. And particularly the public, because the public around there were up in arms in the time. And we said, well, no, the idea is it's to support people to get them to that next level in their life. And then when that changed, probably 6-7 years ago, then the public around there are saying, well, I thought you said. So it does make it challenging. The Royal Crescent, through you, Mr. Mayor, I noticed Mr. Goddard was going to answer the question as to what that might look like for the seniors housing piece. So I would be interested to hear from him.
Thank you, Council. We do have an application there. If I recall, there were 60 to 70 units being proposed. They're working through the approval process, so I would expect to see it within the year.
Right. And that's going to be purpose-built versus modular.
Correct.
Thank you.
Stick built.
Yes. So thank you again. The mayor mentioned it, as did others, about your willingness to work with the city to help those during the cold weather that we had. And I think you're right. I think we might be in for a heat dome again. So, so thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just want to, I'm thanking of Coast today for that. I really just want to thank council and staff, quite frankly. Like, we were approached and it was really the leadership shown by mayor and council and staff to identify a solution to the fact that there was no, extreme weather response program, and it took a little bit of work to put it together. But yeah, I just want that to be noted as well. So thank you.
Very true. I mean, we did say that it absolutely started from staff, and the mayor was very involved as well. But without a willing partner, we wouldn't have been able to do it. So I thank everybody.
And thank you. Councillor Chan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to follow up with maybe Coast or maybe staff about the seniors housing on replacement on Royal Crescent. I'm just curious what stage of the process we are of that housing. And if you could repeat for me when we might expect to see that open.
Through the chair, they have made a first reading application only, and we're going to be bringing that forward as soon as possible. I have to double check exactly where we are with that file, but I believe all the architectural plans have come in. So again, any application is going to take probably to end of this year, I suppose, to get it to final.
That and an additional question on that through the mayor is there could just for my information purposes, like there's sort of like what parameters around seniors housing is that? Is that lower income? Is that folks with different needs?
I'd have to direct that one back to staff, as Coast is not part of that application.
Right. maybe it would be worthwhile if I put a little email together for what we know about the project right now and send it to you to give you some background on it, because I'm not quite clear on all those details with them either yet. Thank you. We
That
really
would
just
be
talked
useful.
largely about the form and character, the units, the less parking, those sorts of details. But there's information I would be happy to share with you and council.
Okay, I look forward to that.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're welcome.
On another note, I'm curious about the youth program that you mentioned. I know that youth program is fairly new. I remember when I heard about it last summer, it was released during its inception stages. I'm curious where it is now.
They continue to work outreach. I think, and don't quote me on this, but I think there's about 30 clients that they're working hands-on with. The good part of this is they're able to access psychiatric supports when needed through Dr. McEwen, as well as linkages in the community to community supports, medical, and refer on when needed to the Foundry. They also facilitate groups in the community, primarily out of Foundry. It's going well, and I believe we've got it funded for another year.
Yeah, maybe so.
Hmm.
Yeah, so in terms of the funding source for that one, it was actually the Coast Foundation that stepped up with the original funding for the first year. That was actually with the benefit of an investment from the Mental Health and Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions. So that ended in March, but we've managed to sustain that program for another year. And what's really great now is we've actually integrated that with the rest of the BC Housing outreach team. So it's forming a broader team. It has access to more resources. So even when we look at things like the rental supplements and things like that, it's really, so how can more of that adult serving team, work together with the youth serving team? I think we've got a bit of a lack of youth services, youth specific services in community. And we define, I think, youth up to 30. So it goes, really what the traditional definition would take us to 24, but we've really seen the need of people that get dropped by care at that 24. And so across Coast programs, we've been really looking at sort of extending that up to 30 to really help through that next phase of transition for people. So I'm really excited to see that program continue for another year. And we're really looking at sustainability and operationalization of those. So if we start programs, we can sustain them. So we're hoping that program will continue into the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carreras.
Thank you. Super quick, and I think it's more of a comment than a question, although I probably have one question in there. First of all, just thank you for the work that you're doing. It's not easy work, but it's incredibly important. And I'm so grateful to have people like you that are doing that work and supporting the citizens in our community. It's incredibly important. And I'm glad to hear that you're taking a trauma lens approach to it, because so many of these citizens, trauma is a big piece, and it's a different lens when you're dealing with trauma. Quick question around Indigenous peoples. You said you had about 11% that access our emergency weather beds, but I imagine you have a percentage of Indigenous folks in the 3 facilities as well. Are you working with FRIS and what sort of supports are you getting around culturally safe environment for them?
So we work with FRIS and Fraser River Indigenous Society, who are often on site doing cleansings and advising us where we need to be culturally sensitive. We've also taken it on within Coast, and we have a committee that deals with all of these issues, and we have a consultant that we can reach out to.
Thank you. And then it must be nice to look forward to the new space on Fraser. I have followed this whole process very closely since, well, for a great many years now. And the Royal Crescent ones were, these were very, very temporary, 18 months to 2 years end of life, and it's been like 5 now. So it will be nice to just have that ability to have a space like Garibaldi, where though it's not considered purpose-built, it is purpose-built in the sense that you're building it for this work, and it allows for greater access of support. So I look forward to that coming to completion, and then the revitalization of the Royal Crescent area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And seeing how there's no other takers, one quick question for my own personal information. You mentioned that you're doing dental services?
No, we don't do dental. We make referrals to dental services.
Oh, you do referrals to dental.
Yes.
Okay, because I was curious to know if the federal government's new dental program applies to folks like this? Would you know?
I heard the federal announcement tied a lot to Child and You. Like again, I understood it to be sort of more of that, but I know there has been a broader request for that universal dental access. So I'm not sure if that applies to everyone on, you know, disability, low income, income assistance, but it's one of those areas we don't think about how important, you know, again, and really for the population we support, dental hygiene, finding both those minimal barrier people that will do the work, but just overall health, like when those things get neglected, it actually has really chronic sort of, you know, challenges. So, you know, getting those referrals out to partners is a really big thing. So, but no, I'll take that one away and find out a little bit more about the new program announced on the federal budget.
Okay. On that note, thank you very much for coming in and sharing your stories with us. Looking forward to seeing some of the results that are coming out of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to item 5, unfinished and new business. 5.1, curbside patio program. And
Mr. Westover is going to be.
Mr. Westover, welcome to the table.
Good morning. Well, good morning, Mayor and Council. Excuse me one second. Let's try it again. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Tyler Westover. I'm the Director of Economic Development. Delighted to be here. Wanted to go through some of these items on curbside patios. These have been topics of conversations, I think, across BC, certainly in Maple Ridge over the last number of years, since 2020 especially. In the report that was provided over to yourselves, these really started a little bit prior to, through separate processes, however, have been folded under. There was one patio that was of a different program, however, was folded under these here because of the, by and large, the temporary expanded service area provided by BC Liquor and Cannabis Branch compliance through COVID. So really what that did is expanded the service areas, those areas that restaurants or hospitality sector could have their patrons, not so much the amount of people within any one space itself. So in this case for us in British Columbia, in Maple Ridge, that meant effectively going onto sidewalks or in some cases onto different parking areas. So it became a bit of an opportunity for those to see clients come in, still be compliant with the public health orders, and still see some vibrancy within towns. Now, as we move forward, there are certainly discussions that we need to have, knowing that there are some impacts on the flip side of that as well, which I think we need to be very well aware of. So to continue with the context here, council did pass a motion June 9th, really to have an expedited permitting process. This was meant to alleviate challenges for folks going through a, otherwise more arduous process. Let's quickly move folks so that they can access this program, make sure that they're able to have staff or have patrons be able to utilize their services, especially with public health orders in place. Simplified drawings, compliance with public safety and access requirements were required, by and large, liability insurance. And then there were some waived fees for the highway use permits. So quick and easy as much as possible from our side, while still ensuring public safety as much as possible. I should also note, and it'll be mentioned a little bit later on, that the TESAs still have continued to be extended. That's well within your report as well. Really what those are authorizations from this provincial body to still allow for that expanded use area from any one of those businesses that have utilized the patio program. Okay. Over and above, looking in October, council then moved forward with the potential for winterization and extending the program as well. There were pieces required that would have an engineer that would have to go through the drawings, ensuring that there's ability to have snow weights and those types of things on any folks that wanted to go through that program. And then in December of 2014, council did note that there should be a long-term policy along with consultation with the BIA, the Chamber of Local Businesses and Residents. And there was a survey that was conducted in March of 2022. From that survey, that consultation, there were some open-ended questions. There was some debate on some of the more closed-ended questions, seeing that it was all or nothing type of approach. That was in a letter that came back from one of our partners, the BIA, where they noted there were some concerns. So we took into account here these open-ended questions, of which there was general support for the curbside patios. There were concerns expressed about parking, especially within the town center. And then there were close to the same amount of expressions that there is enough parking in the town center and folks can walk. So you can see this is a little bit of a challenging scenario for anyone to be in, where we kind of have a bit of a split group of folks in their comments. However, by and large, folks do want businesses and especially those with patios to thrive here in Maple Ridge. So that's why we're coming to yourselves today as well. Should note that both the BIA and the Chamber did have specific letters come back to us. By and large, support of the patio structures and utilizing the program. However, there were notes, especially on 224th Street, that there are some challenges with non-use, with low use over the winter periods, especially, and then some challenges, especially for the business owners, which we'll get into in 1 second. So in the current context, we had in November concerns raised by businesses on 224th. They had noted that those retail businesses on 224th, they had noted that especially for holiday shopping, this is a challenge for them. They are losing a couple of parking spots at a minimum in front of their stores. In some cases being down 20% year over year in their holiday shopping and their numbers, which is certainly concerning. And wanting to take a reasonable approach, wanting to make sure that those that are utilizing the patios are still successful, wanting to ensure that there's still vibrancy in the community. So, you know, commend them on being quite reasonable in what their approach is, but noting that we need to have a new approach to how the city manages the patios, especially along 224th. In the interim, what we had done is looked at a short-term parking pilot utilizing the Maple Ridge Business Center underground parkade, decorative lighting on McIntosh Avenue, public online mapping of where free parking and in proximate areas where that could happen, really with minimal to no impact to what their sales were. It just didn't seem to work for the consumer behavior, so to speak, to get more folks into their stores. And then once again, LCRB has extended those tests successively, and the most recent extending over to December 31st, 2024. So that does speak once again to really needing to look at this in a longer term view and ensuring that we're building a modernized and hopefully a streamlined approach for businesses to use and people to enjoy as we're moving ahead. Should also note that there are a number of projects on parking underway. This is a part of some of the parking challenge that's within our community, or so we hear. So there is a bylaw review that's underway. There's an internal group that's been struck, really to look at how we can have insights from a multi-divisional and multi-departmental approach for parking, and this being a part of that as well. And then there's really and truly an opportunity that we have here to modernize our approach, knowing that these extensions continue to come. The next one ends December 31, 2024. So that is quite some time here. Let's build a program that's going to really work for folks, the vast majority of folks, as we move ahead and activate our downtown and community as much as possible. Work has been done with engineering, bylaw and licensing, community safety, building services. And then we would also look to connect and collaborate with others as we're moving ahead, namely legal and legislative services, engineering operations, RCMP, fire, and then, of course, the business owners, BIA, Chamber, and others. Okay. There's a recommendation. More than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. I will open it up for questions. Councillor Duick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I think you pretty much capture the comments that I've heard since the beginning of these temporary patios. So I think everyone is pretty much supportive. The issue becomes a couple of businesses on 224th particularly in the winter months when the patios aren't being used and their business is impacted. So I look forward to further discussions on that because it's not like they even have alternatives. And as you mentioned, the alternatives we tried doesn't work. For some reason, people want to park right in front of where they're going shopping. They can't walk a half a block for whatever reason. So we don't want to discount that either. The other is the overall parking in the downtown, having a variety of time limits. So, you know, if you're a retail shop, an hour is fine, but if you're a hair salon or a practice where somebody's more than an hour, that makes it a challenge. So I think we have to be open-minded when it comes to that, you know, the 1 hour or 2 hour doesn't necessarily work. It depends on the area and the type of business. So I look forward to the work and the consultation, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Councillor Schiller.
Thank you, Mayor Rumi, and thank you, Mr. Westover, for your presentation. Nice to see this coming forward, and I look forward to seeing more. I just wanted to clarify a little bit about the timeline. So if this is going to come back in October, is that because we know that the provincial approval for this is still going to be in place and it's going to be in place for a further year?
Thank you for the question through you, Mr. Chair. The reason for the timeline is really showing the immediacy, knowing that we are effectively hitting patio season here fairly soon. We want enough time for those that already have patios, but recognize that there has been significant challenges for those retail stores that have been impacted otherwise. So want to make sure that there is more than enough time for folks to understand what the potentials are as we move ahead. But if we are able to then bring a new process, a new program in with guidelines and have that before October 31, then we're very clear on what that can be. And we're not hitting that holiday, you know, that major holiday campaign shopping that is so critical for retail as we move ahead. Let's make sure that we're doing that within reasonable timeframes. So
thank you. And is it our understanding that the provincial sort of approval of these is going to carry on to the future?
So the last bulletin has continued to December 31st, 2024. I would not be shocked to see that extend further or a new program or authorization be put in place for them to become permanent.
Great, thank you. Just a little bit around you know, how businesses might look to join this program. Under the current system that we have, can you just speak a little bit to how the permitting process works and just sort of an idea around timelines? You know,
Yeah.
if there's a business out there that's thinking about possibly considering adding a patio for this summer, is
Mhm.
that an option for them?
So current rules would apply. So yes, they would be able to. So that would effectively be a sidewalk cafe. They would have an application that would go in through our counters at the front here. Economic development, my understanding in the past has been a part of this as well. So facilitating that through simplified drawings would be provided over to us. Some of the clearances for pedestrian traffic within the area. So making sure that folks are protected, so to speak, and not walking into public laneways. Cafe boundaries would be established as well. Public access and safety criteria, minimum sidewalk width of 2 meters or so would be required. And proof of liability with the city of Maple Ridge that's noted. And then that's submitted, goes through our internal process once again at the front counter there, and they would be able to have their patio, so to speak.
Great. Oh, and just finally, I just wanted to clarify about the survey that was done that we saw the results of. Were those surveys to businesses specifically, or was that like just
It was
for the
out
general?
through general public. Some businesses were included, and then I believe comment from both the BIA as well as the chamber.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. I look
you.
forward to seeing more.
Thank you. Actually, I was remiss here. I should have called a motion to move this, so I'm going to call that now. Can I get a motion? Moved by Councillor Carrera, seconded by Councillor Schiller. Thank you. Anybody else for the speakers list? Councillor Tan.
Thank you, Mayor Rumi. Through you, a couple of questions about the program. First of all, I'm curious about wheelchair accessibility requirements. Do we have any requirements for patios?
I do not believe so. They would be under our engineering guidelines by and large. So would likely capture on that front, as well as with anything by and large with building code that it would have to be compliant with. But I can confirm. Unless.
Through the chair to Councillor Tan, given the relative temporary nature, you would not have seen the full accommodation that you would see with a permanent structure. But I think it is certainly it's certainly be considered, but I think it would be dealt with on an individual basis. And I think as we move forward, this will certainly have to be something that we'll have to fully integrate into the approval process for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. And I think that when I thought about this and I thought about best practices across different cities, I thought about the importance to our council of having a truly inclusive city. And I can understand during the pandemic, there were many things that just had to come together on the fly and not everything could be incorporated. But as I look and see that this patio program, both in our city and also many other cities, are likely to become more permanent fixtures or at least longer lasting fixtures, I think these are important policy mechanisms to be put in place to actually that all of us can enjoy that. So I really look forward to seeing that when that comes back, wheelchair accessibility requirements. The other question I had was about downtown parking utilization. Do we have a study around this? Have we ever looked at utilization rates?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will ask.
And through the chair to Councillor Tan, are you referring to off street or to on street?
I'm thinking about parking as a whole, and to step back, the reason why I'm asking this question is about, I know there's lots of concerns around parking for many different stakeholders and many different needs involved. And, folks have many different opinions about parking utilization. And so I'm curious if we've ever done a study and collected data so we have some empirical evidence to work off of.
If I could just speak to some of the information. I don't believe that there has been data collected on street parking, because that is very much a short-term function, supportive of the businesses. And as was noted, you've got typically 1 to 2 hour duration in the town centre. For the underground parking structure and also Edge Street, which is a surface parking lot beside the transit exchange. Pre-COVID, there was an extremely high utilization of that area. That's why we ended up with the interim parking structure, interim parking area in front of Brickwater there. And I believe that staff are also looking for a further extension of that. There's quite a lot of uncertainty moving forward, given, post-COVID, what are the demands likely to be? The other area that sits is the 4 lots that are operated by the Downtown Parking Society. There's about 160 lots at the moment. They're currently operated on a monthly basis for employees. So this year, planning, I believe I'll speak for my colleagues here, that there is a review plan for the off-street parking bylaw. And I think also that there is an opportunity. I think we want to get on the engineering side, we want to get more of an idea of what post-COVID is going to look like. And there's also opportunity as potential developments occur in the town centre to consider shared parking opportunities that could be utilized. So there's a number of balls in the air. I think the downstairs or the underground parking lot and the Edge Street parking lot is managed by Impark. So they have some numbers, but I don't believe we have got a really good utilization, a definitive utilization of those parking lots, except to say that pre-COVID and with the installation or with the implementation of the R3 rapid bus, we saw a very high utilization that has dropped off, and we really haven't seen a recovery post-COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. I think through you, Mayor Rumi. I think this is an interesting piece of data. I think that would be useful for us to have because I think we've had a number of these kinds of discussions around our table when it comes to housing developments in the downtown area, and now also about patio program, because we know how important that patios are. And there's an expectation nowadays that we have in our downtown core patios. And so, and that because that lends to the vibrancy of the downtown, there's almost an expectation of modern downtown that we have this kind of program. And at the same time, as Councillor Dewitt pointed out that, you know, if I'm going to go down and treat myself to a nice spa day and do my nails and have my hair and all that kind of lovely stuff, I don't want to be sitting there with my hair stuck in foil, thinking I have to go move my car now. That's no fun for anyone. So just being clear and I think parking is this very large general concept. And I hear you, Mr. Pollock, talk about parking downstairs or parking along Edge Street. You know, if I was going to do my hair, I want to know nice hair salons down in a different spot downtown. I'm not sure if I would be thinking about hiking it out too, you know, by the transit center. So I just want to be clear when we talk about parking in general. It seems like a largely amorphous concept. I want to be clear about what specific parking spots we're talking about, because I think there are very different needs in very different areas. So I think it's hard for me to have this discussion without knowing specifically what we're talking about. Or at least for me, like having clearer data to be more helpful for me. So I'd be curious if, you know, staff were able to tell us what would be needed to have this sort of parking utilization study. And again, both for this downtown patio program to understand and bolster our program, and also again for the many other housing developments that have been talked about in the town center. So I'll put that there. So in terms of the holiday sales statistics that you brought up, could you give me a sense of when those statistics were collected, when or they self-reported, by how many businesses, how many respondents?
Through you, Mr. Chair, self-reported anecdotal information from the companies themselves that are impacted on 2/24. So that 20% was a year-over-year number, I believe. Companies did note that it expressed in November that there were some challenges about 3 weeks prior in the start of October of saying, hey, look, we are coming into a season where we've traditionally now seen with patios coming in that drop to revenues, especially during a time that is so critical for them. So they needed some interim solutions. That was all self-reported. Need to be honest about that for sure. And then the other piece is that they were quite open to a reasonable pilot approach that we took. So big commendation to them for being open to trying new things and seeing if that worked.
And it's fantastic that folks are able to be clear about what their needs are and then sort of find reasonable solutions for all stakeholders. And I'm curious in terms of those stats, like what year did they start being reported in, and how many respondents do we have who reported that drop in sales? And were there specific geographic clusters of those folks?
Anecdotally, this was 2/24 through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, anecdotally, at 2/24 were the major group that were reporting some of those numbers and self-reporting. And then BIA also had noted that there were some of their members as well that had noted that.
And
but clustered because of the patios itself. It was contained in this patio discussion.
Sounds good. And I understand. And so when did folks start reporting this drop in holiday sales? And the reason why I'm asking is that there's the, you know, business is there are many factors that lead to business, and absolutely business owners know best for what impacts the business. And the pandemic came and there was a transition to online shopping, and there are many other factors that could have impacted. And so I just want to make sure that before we attribute any changes in holiday sales to the downtown patio program, that we're clear that there is direct attribution here.
And through you, Mr. Chair, on that one, it was really about a 1 year reporting that I had heard of.
Okay.
So just since the last year, and then anecdotes of noting that, you know, in the last couple of years since patios have come in, there's been successive drops in revenues.
Okay. So I'm hearing.
So let's say 2020 or so, I would say, if we get the benefit of the doubt on the timeframe.
We can come back to you. Thanks. Councillor Carreras.
Thank you. It was a good report, and a lot of those comments, I think, as many of us have expressed, we've heard there's a love and a challenge, and a lot of pieces that complicate this. I think that I definitely support the motion. Basically, it's just saying you come back to us with a program. So at this point, yeah, I totally support you coming back to us with a program. There are some patios that are utilized all year round and are very, very busy, others that are more seasonal. And I have full faith in you that you're going to find the perfect balance when you come back to us to to find that perfect solution for everything in downtown and in the parking and the shopping in downtown in particular on 224th. And it's also challenging. We talked about seasonal because I will also recognize that some days in January are warmer than June. So it's often warmer in January than June sometimes. But I just want to say I support it and I look forward to the report coming back to us. And I think when we come back and we see what you're proposing, it'll answer a lot of our questions that we might have right now around the details and how it's going to balance and how we're going to find that solution. So thank you. Thank you. It's time to look at it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will put in my 2 cents before I go on to round 2. Thanks for the presentation. I think it can be controversial. I mean, certainly we've heard from both sides of the story. As this is just a recommendation to send back to staff to come back with something that we might find palatable. I do get nervous when I hear about anecdotal, because if you're a business owner, you can't bank on that. We need to get more information. We need to make sure that we dial in. There are some serious concerns from business owners that are lacking that parking spot. And while I would love to see patios, because I think that's a great way to revitalize our downtown, I don't want to do it at the loss of someone's business. So when you go back, our hope is that, well, maybe not a hope, but I want to put your guys' feet to the fire and say, let's get more information here. Let's make sure that we've spoken to the businesses that are along that street, each and every one. And if it means personally speaking to them, I think that's what we need to do. We owe it to all the business owners on that street to find the right balance of what makes sense, right? Only then can we make a really good decision based on that. So I'm pleased to support this currently to allow you to go back and come back with something of what does that modernization look like. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, round 2. Councillor Duick.
Thank you. I think we just need clarification of anecdotal. I took it to mean the business didn't actually provide you numbers. They said
Correct.
by talking to you directly or through the BIA. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, correct.
That's how I took it. So it's not that you didn't talk to them. It's that they didn't provide you in 2019, I made this much during the season versus 2020 and 2021. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tan? Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Youssef, then Councillor Tan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Westover, for the information. Just real quick, are you going to be looking at or considering expanding the patio program outside of the downtown area to other businesses that may be located in other business parks throughout the city?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that will be a consideration that we do have. Some more work needs to be done with other departments and divisions within Maple Ridge to see what the complicating factors of that could be. But certainly it's on all of us to have a very vibrant community, not just a downtown that is very much a priority. Don't get me wrong. However, if we can have a vibrant program throughout all of Maple Ridge, then I think that's a good thing.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was my question.
Thank you. Councillor Tan?
Thanks, Mayor Rumi. The next question I had was around, this is more of a thought without a solution yet. But I was thinking a lot about this idea of the privatization of public space, given that these are roads that are public roads, that these patios are being set up on, that, that all taxpayers contribute to. And, very happy to have a vibrant downtown, and that where we do allow for the patios to come in and, love the vibrancy, it does commercialize and privatize a public space. And I've been sitting and thinking about this for a little bit and trying to look at best practices around the city and around different cities and different ways to manage this. But this is the concern that I have. I know that other cities have had this concern, and happy to toss the ball over to you now, Director Westover. And when the program comes back, I'd love to see some sort of consideration around that about, is there a way to balance both the needs of private businesses, who we definitely need, and also public use as well? Because as we know, in many North American downtown areas, we don't have a lot of public spaces for you to sit, for families to just chill out, for teenagers to just chill out. That that notion or that concept. So I'm just going to put that there. And my last thought is around the policies for patio use. So I saw some comments here about, and about the BIA and the chambers and different businesses reporting whether this patio is more used, this patio is underused. Maybe we can get rid of this one and take this one out, put that one in. I think that there's a need here. When I see that, I think there's a need here for sort of a third party like government to come in and say, okay, these are our policies, and make it very abundantly clear what use of patios are, so that there's not a need for peers to then come to the city with different concerns about their peers. I think it's a much more healthy approach for the business environment as a whole to have much more clarity upfront about this is the city's policy and this is the city's stance on it. Did I make myself clear there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, 100%. I think there are two items that you brought up here that are incredibly salient to the conversation. One of them being that commodification, so to speak, of that public space. There's also opportunities for the community to provide spaces that don't necessarily belong just to one, but do truly become a part of the commons. So whether that's you can take a coffee or a tea and sit at a picnic bench or some public provided street furniture or in a different area and create some creative placemaking opportunities. That can also be considered as a part of this here. And I also think that, really the approach does need to be a healthy approach for not only, our residents here and having them be active, but also to our business community so it can thrive. So definitely take your comments.
Thank you, Mayor Ree.
Thank you very much. And my final comment, just a point of clarification. So if we were to send this back to staff to develop a modernized sub-seasonal patio program with design guidelines, I get the engineering aspect of that. Will you go back and talk to the folks? Would you engage everybody, or are you relying on the information you had before?
Great question, Mr. Mayor. Well, I fully intend that we will be engaging with all of those impacted groups and audiences, including our chamber and BIA, as well as those impacted businesses that have been vocal with us and open and honest in particular hotspot areas, so to speak, of patios.
Okay. Seeing no further comments or questions, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And it is unanimous. Motion has been carried. We look forward to what that is going to look like.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see, no correspondence?
No correspondence, sir.
No briefing on other items of interest? All right, well, in that case, seeing that we have no further business, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all very much.